The invitation arrived folded inside a glitch, a thin sliver of light wedged between two routine transit updates, blinking like it had something to confess. He noticed it only because the coffee dispenser on Deck C exploded again, and the ship's AI insisted on apologizing in ancient Latin. While he wiped synthetic foam from his sleeve, the message unfolded itself in the air, colors shifting nervously, as if unsure whether it should exist. Attendance strongly encouraged, it said, which was a strange way to invite someone to a party, especially one located several light years off any approved human route. He laughed because laughing was easier than wondering how an unauthorized message slipped through a military-grade firewall. He laughed again when the message added a small, blinking note: dress code flexible, gravity optional. That felt less like a joke when the ship lurched, compensating for a micro-jump miscalculation, and the AI muttered something about destiny needing a software update. He didn't plan to go, he really didn't. Humans who went to alien parties usually ended up as cautionary anecdotes in training manuals, right after sections labeled "do not touch" and "definitely do not drink that." But the invitation kept reappearing, slipping into reflections, humming faintly during sleep cycles, once even materializing on the inside of his eyelids when he blinked too hard. Eventually, curiosity won, which annoyed him because curiosity always won, and he was tired of losing arguments with himself. The jump deposited him above a planet that looked like it was mid-celebration already, lights rippling across its surface in slow, rhythmic pulses. As his shuttle descended, the atmosphere adjusted itself without asking permission, wrapping around the hull like a friendly hand. The landing platform wasn't solid so much as cooperative, reshaping under his boots, responding to his weight with a soft wobble that made him spread his arms instinctively, like that would help. Music hit him before sound did, a vibration in his bones, a suggestion rather than a command. The party stretched in every direction, structures blooming and folding back into themselves, beings of wildly different shapes moving with purpose that felt festive even when it made no sense. Gravity fluctuated just enough to keep things interesting or dangerous, depending on perspective. He took 3 steps, misjudged a shift, and floated upward, colliding gently with a being that resembled a chandelier made of fog. "Sorry," he said automatically. The fog chimed in what he assumed was acceptance or possibly an insult. He drifted back down, boots reconnecting with the ground as if nothing unusual had happened, which seemed to be the general attitude here. He was trying very hard to look like someone who belonged when he noticed her laughing. Not at him, which was new and comforting, but at a cluster of small, hopping creatures arguing with a floating screen that refused to translate their jokes correctly. Her laughter cut through the ambient noise, warm and sharp at the same time, and he turned before he could stop himself. She looked human in the way a dream looks real until you wake up and realize the details were slightly off. Her face was familiar enough to disarm him, her expressions readable, her smile quick. Then he noticed her ears, long and elegant, extending past where human ears politely ended, tapering into soft points that angled back, twitching with every sound, every shift in attention. They moved when she laughed, a subtle flick that felt intimate, like watching someone's pulse. She noticed him noticing and raised an eyebrow, one ear tilted forward, the other back, as if independently assessing him. "Is it that obvious?" she asked. He blinked. "That you're laughing or that I'm staring?" "Both," she said, and then frowned slightly. "Actually, wait, did I say that out loud or did your translator get creative?" His implant chose that moment to emit a small puff of smoke and project the word banana between them. They both stared at it. "Well," she said thoughtfully, "that explains the tone." He snorted despite himself. "I think it means hello." "Bold choice," she said. "In my culture, that's usually a threat." "Great," he said. "I've traveled all this way to accidentally declare war with fruit." Her ears lifted, which he would later learn meant amusement. "Relax. If you were threatening me, there would be more punctuation." The screen flickered, replaced by a more stable translation field, and he felt the familiar hum behind his eyes as language settled into place. Relief washed over him, followed closely by embarrassment. "I'm not very good at this," he said, gesturing vaguely at everything. "Good," she replied. "Neither is the party." They stood there, surrounded by controlled chaos, watching a group of beings attempt to synchronize their bioluminescence with the music and failing spectacularly. Someone drifted by upside down, waving cheerfully. A structure nearby turned inside out and applauded itself. I'm not supposed to be here, he said. None of us are, she said. That's the point. Her ears flicked again and he caught himself smiling. He wondered how long he'd been standing there, gravity shifting just enough to keep him alert, time stretching like it was curious too. He hesitated, then laughed. Actually, never mind, names feel aggressive right now. She nodded solemnly, agreed, let's exchange embarrassing facts instead. Okay, he said, I once saluted a door because I thought it outranked me. Her laughter burst out, bright and unrestrained, and her ears flattened briefly before lifting again. I married a ceremonial plant by mistake. He stared. I feel like you win. Oh, absolutely, she said. The divorce was brutal. The plant kept the house. They drifted closer without either of them deciding to, the space between them shrinking as the party swelled around them. He noticed the way her attention sharpened when he spoke, the way her ears angled toward him, filtering sound. She noticed the way he watched them, not rudely but with open curiosity. You can ask, she said. Ask what? About the ears, she said. Everyone wants to, you're being polite and it's exhausting. He considered, do they do more than hear? She smiled just a little, they hear honesty. He laughed, that's inconvenient. For you or for me? Yes. Somewhere above them the music shifted, deepening, and the party responded like a single organism taking a breath. Lights dimmed, then flared. The invitation's promise settled around them, a sense that something was beginning slowly without urgency. He felt it then, the unfamiliar pull, not just attraction but recognition, as if the universe had nudged him and said, pay attention, this part matters. So, he said lightly because seriousness could wait. What happens at this party? Her ears tilted, catching sounds he couldn't hear, possibilities he couldn't see. Usually, mistakes, occasionally, miracles. Any warnings? Yeah, she said, don't trust the punch. He glanced at a swirling container labeled definitely safe. Too late. She laughed again, and the sound threaded through him, anchoring him in a place that shouldn't exist, at a party that bent reality for fun, standing next to an alien woman whose ears twitched with every truth she heard. And for the first time since the invitation blinked into his life, he stopped wondering how he got there and started wondering how long he could stay. The punch tasted like regret and citrus, which he suspected was intentional. He swallowed anyway because refusing a drink at an alien party felt like tempting fate, and fate already had his address. The liquid shimmered as it went down, briefly displaying what might have been a weather forecast for a star he didn't recognize. His vision pixelated, then snapped back. See, she said, still alive. I think it just flirted with my liver, he replied. Should I be worried? Only if it asks for your number. They drifted away from the main cluster of revelers, not walking so much as being gently suggested in a direction by the floor which seemed to have opinions. Around them, conversations overlapped in layers, some audible, some transmitted directly through the air as colored pulses. He caught fragments, arguments about entropy, compliments delivered in prime numbers, someone loudly apologizing to a chair. So, he said, adjusting as gravity briefly lost interest in him, is this a regular thing? Or did I stumble into an interstellar once-in-a-lifetime? She considered, her ears lifting, then flattening slightly. It's annual, or it was. Time got offended last cycle and stopped attending. That explains a lot about my schedule, he said. They passed a group engaged in what looked like a heated debate but was apparently dancing. Each movement was precise, reactive, a counterpoint to the other's step. One participant spun too aggressively and was immediately declared wrong by a bell that materialized above their head. Careful, she said. If you move like that here, you're agreeing to 3 treaties and a duel. I can barely manage socks in the morning, he said. I'll sit out the interpretive diplomacy. They stopped near a projection pool where memories were being shared recreationally. Images flickered above the surface, first kisses, failed experiments, a surprisingly emotional moment involving a sandwich. He leaned closer, curious, and immediately recoiled as the pool projected his most embarrassing childhood haircut into the air. Nope, he said firmly, absolutely not. She laughed, her ears twitching in rapid succession. Oh, that's mild. Last year someone leaked their internal monologue. That sounds illegal. It was, she said cheerfully. We find them a poem. They talked slowly, circling topics without urgency. Worlds came up, then expectations, then the quiet spaces between obligations. She spoke about a society structured around listening, about how silence was a language and noise a negotiation. He talked about humans, about rules stacked on rules, about how curiosity was treated like a design flaw. At some point, an AI host drifted by, spherical and glowing, interrupting them mid-sentence. Mandatory game, it announced, pairing detected. They both stared. We're not, he began. Too late, she said, it sensed proximity. The floor opened politely beneath them, depositing them onto a platform suspended over nothing in particular. Symbols flashed around them. Explain, he said. Trust exercise, she replied, usually humiliating. Of course it is. They were instructed to synchronize their heart rates using only eye contact and mild panic. He tried not to think about it. She focused, ears angled forward, reading him in ways he couldn't reciprocate. This feels unfair, he muttered. Breathe, she said. You're loud. I'm sorry, he said. I'll try to think quieter. Somehow, it worked. The platform chimed approval, releasing them back into the party with a spray of confetti that immediately apologized for existing. That wasn't so bad, he said. You didn't see your face, she replied. Very dramatic. They laughed, tension dissolving into something easier. He realized he was no longer thinking about leaving, or consequences, or how many regulations he was probably violating just by standing next to her. Later or earlier, time remained sulky. They found themselves watching the edge of the celebration where the lights thinned and the noise softened. Drones hovered discreetly, pretending to be decorations. Those aren't decorations, he said. No, she agreed, they're pretending not to watch. That's comforting, he said, in a deeply unsettling way. Her ears flattened just a little. This is usually where people decide what the party meant. He looked at her, really looked at the familiarity and the difference coexisting without argument. And what does it mean? She smiled, small but genuine. It means it worked. Somewhere the music swelled again and the party leaned back toward chaos. He raised his cup. To mistakes, he said. She clinked hers against it. And miracles. The punch shimmered, approving. The party began to end the way it had begun, quietly misbehaving. The music didn't stop so much as lose confidence. Notes hesitated, repeating themselves, drifting out of rhythm as if unsure whether anyone was still listening. The lights dimmed in patches, not uniformly, like stars blinking out of existence one by one after deciding they were tired. Gravity stabilized, which felt almost rude after all the freedom it had allowed. Around them, structures started remembering what shape they were supposed to be. He noticed it first because the punch stopped flirting with his liver and settled into being a beverage. That's ominous, he said, peering into the cup. It's gone flat. She followed his gaze, her ears angling back, then forward again. That means the window's closing. Window to what? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched a group nearby hug each other with exaggerated enthusiasm, exchanging objects that shimmered briefly before disappearing. Goodbyes, he realized, not dramatic, not tragic, just practiced. The celebration has rules, she said finally. It pretends not to, but it does. When it ends, everyone goes back to where they're allowed to be. And we're not allowed to be, he gestured between them. Her ears flattened just slightly. Near. That landed heavier than he expected. He felt it settle somewhere behind his ribs, not painful exactly, but inconvenient. He tried to laugh it off because that had worked so far. Well, he said, I've broken worse rules. I once jaywalked across a 6-lane orbital highway. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Those rules were written to be broken. These were written to prevent things. Prevent what? She looked at him then, really looked, and her ears angled toward him so fully it felt like standing in a spotlight. Change. Around them, the drones that pretended to be decorations drifted closer, their movements subtle but coordinated. One passed overhead, projecting a harmless swirl of color that smelled faintly like citrus and authority. Are we in trouble? He asked. Not yet, she said. You're still technically a guest. And you? He shrugged, an almost human gesture. I'm always technically a problem. That earned a laugh from him, reflexive but genuine. You're very polite about it. They walked, or were gently carried, toward the outer edge of the celebration, where the structures thinned into platforms and the sky opened up into something vast and impatient. Ships waited there, elegant and strange, humming softly as if trying not to rush anyone. He stopped. I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. She stopped too, her ears lifted, then settled into a careful angle. Neither do I. Good, he said, because I'm terrible at pretending. For a moment, they just stood there, the noise of the party fading behind them, the quiet ahead pressing in. He realized how different he felt from when he'd arrived, less cautious, less tightly assembled. Something in him had shifted, loosened, and he wasn't sure he could pack it away again even if he tried. So, he said lightly because that was his way, what are the options? Besides tragic misunderstanding and wistful glances across the void. She snorted, you've been watching our dramas. I've been studying, he said, I like to be prepared. Her ears flicked with amusement, then stilled. There is a loophole. He perked up, I love loopholes, they're my second favorite holes. She gave him a look, do not finish that sentence. He grinned, too late. The celebration, she continued, is neutral ground. Anything agreed to here can't be undone by outside authority. It's why the rules are so strict about proximity. Connections made here are inconvenient. Inconvenient how? They persist. He let that sink in. You're saying if we decide something now. It carries weight, she said, across systems, across laws. The drones hovered closer. One of them projected a small message into the air, polite and ominous at the same time. Final call for declarations, he laughed softly. That sounds like a terrible karaoke night. She smiled despite herself, it usually is. He thought about his ship, his routines, the careful distance he'd kept from everything that mattered because it was easier that way. He thought about how effortlessly this strange, impossible night had slipped past his defenses, how he felt more like himself here than he had in years. I didn't come here looking for this, he said. Neither did I, she replied. But I'm glad I found it. Her ears lifted fully now, unguarded. So am I. The drone cleared its non-existent throat. Okay, he said to it. Give us a second, this is a big declaration, we want to workshop it. The drone paused, then projected a countdown that very clearly ignored his request. She laughed, tension breaking through. You really are terrible at authority. Years of practice, he said, then more seriously, if we do this, what happens? She considered, there will be paperwork, so much paperwork. He groaned, I take it back. And scrutiny, she continued. And complications, and people who will tell us it's not efficient, not logical, not worth the effort. That's practically a love letter where I come from, he said, her smile softened. You would have to leave your roots, I would have to challenge mine. I've been wanting a reroute, he said, my maps are boring. The countdown reached its final pulse. She took a breath and he noticed how her ears angled toward him, trusting, open. Without quite deciding to, he reached out. His hand hovered for a fraction of a second, then settled against hers. Her fingers curled around his, warm, solid, undeniably real. The drone projected a flare of light. Declaration registered. Nothing exploded, which felt promising. For a heartbeat, nothing happened at all. Then the air shifted, subtle but undeniable, like a door unlocking somewhere far away. The drones retreated, suddenly uninterested. The party exhaled its last, lights dimming into starlight, structures folding themselves away with a satisfied hum. She laughed breathless, well, he echoed, that was anticlimactic. Give it time, she said, it usually catches up. They stood there as ships departed one by one, slipping into transit lanes that shimmered briefly before closing. Eventually, only a few platforms remained, including the one beneath their feet. So, he said, what now? She squeezed his hand. Now we negotiate reality. He liked the sound of that. Later, because time had finally decided to behave, they stood aboard his ship, which complained loudly about unauthorized passengers before sulking into silence. She explored with open curiosity, touching panels, listening to the